We might only be 1 week into the NHL and AHL seasons, but is Logan Mailloux going to force someone's hand to make a decision to call him up? Hey friends, welcome to the channel. My name is Amy Johnson, a credentialed reporter for Rocket Sports Media, covering the Montreal Canadiens and their AHL affiliate and prospects for the last 10 years. And today I want to get you caught up on how the Laval Rocket opened their season, 2 games on the road last weekend. But more importantly, I'd like to take a closer look at Logan Mailloux's performance and start exploring whether or not he could find himself called up to the Montreal Canadiens sooner rather than later. Before we talk about Mailloux's performance in particular, let's just give you a general overview of Laval's opening 2 games of the season. As I mentioned, they started their season on the road, playing in Providence against the Providence Bruins, the AHL affiliate of the Boston Bruins, and a team that the Laval Rocket actually hasn't faced for the last 3 seasons. They then followed that up with a trip to Springfield, Massachusetts on Saturday night to take on the Thunderbirds, and they are the AHL affiliate of the St. Louis Blues. Friday night's tilt in Providence was the first game of the season for new head coach Pascal Vincent and his team of Laval Rocket players, and they came out with a very dominant performance, despite the fact that it was the Bruins who put up the first 2 goals of the game on 4 shots. The Laval Rocket responded incredibly and put up the next 5 goals unanswered to take a resounding 5-2 victory over the Providence Bruins to open the season. In fact, they outshot Providence 39-14 in this game. Now, the following night when they went to Springfield and Laval have a little bit of a rivalry dating back to a few years ago when they took it all the way to Game 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals. Springfield eventually coming out victorious in that Game 7 and eliminating the Laval Rocket from a potential Calder Cup Championship series. This game was played much more tightly than the previous night's game. In fact, there was no scoring in the opening 20 minutes of play. The score was even at 1-1 after 40 minutes of play. And then in the third period, Springfield just found an extra gear, managed to pot 2 additional goals, one of which was an empty netter. But they were able to take their home opener with a victory, beating Laval 3-1. So Laval starts the season at an even 500, splitting their road trip. So happy to see Laval have a very strong performance on Friday night. And there were some things to work on out of Saturday's game that I'm sure that they'll focus on this week in practice. While finding the back of the net didn't come as easily on Saturday night as it did on Friday, Laval is going to get a little bit of a reinforcement on the offensive side of things now that Alex barre-boulet has been put through waivers, cleared waivers, and has reported to the Laval Rocket for practice this week and joining the team. And if you have watched our videos here on the channel recently, you might remember me saying this not too long ago. This is essentially kind of another Raphael Harvey-Pinard kind of player, someone who will perform very well at the AHL level. If you've gone through a lot of injuries, maybe he's a call-up that can come up every once in a while, but not someone that I think you can rely on a consistent and regular basis on an NHL roster, at least not at this point. It's no secret that when he was signed to an NHL deal over the summer, I didn't agree with the fact that he got a one-way deal for barre-boulet, and it's nothing against barre-boulet, but I have said repeatedly, barre-boulet has had the most success in the AHL. He has had incredible numbers, in fact, in the AHL. He is a very good AHL player. He's one of those guys who's kind of right on the fringe of making the jump to the NHL, but when he gets there, it's just not as strong of a game as it possibly could be. And we saw it just took 2 games with the Montreal Canadiens for Emil Heineman to solidify the decision that he was the one who deserved to be there and be in the lineup. Alex barre-boulet was the expendable one to send down to Laval. Pascal Vincent says that he's had a good attitude since arriving there and that he's going to try to work to get back to the Montreal Canadiens, but understands that he needs to be a good leader in the Laval locker room. So we wish him the best, and we'll see what the addition of barre-boulet in amongst the forwards can do to help the scoring along for Laval this week. Now, I did mention that Logan Mailloux had a tremendous showing on opening weekend, and I'm going to tell you why in just a moment. But first, I'd like to just highlight some of the other prospects and who of them stood out over the course of the weekend. And really, there were a lot of them. Philip Méchard ended up with a 4-point weekend. He scored a goal and had 2 assists in Friday night's game, and he added another assist on Saturday night as well. Jared Davidson had a goal and an assist throughout the weekend. Adam Engstrom potted his first goal on Friday night. And Owen Beck even had an assist on the weekend as well. There were a number of prospects for the Montreal Canadiens who really kind of took the reins and took their first opportunities to make a positive impression, not only on the coaching staff, but I'm sure management who was watching as well, and the fans. That brings us finally to Logan Mailloux, and he is absolutely my standout star for this week. I have said at the end of last season, I believe that Logan Mailloux was going to be a serious contender for an NHL roster spot this fall. I repeated that many times over the summer. I absolutely doubled down on that during rookie camp and training camp, even though, even to his own admission, he didn't have the strongest training camp. But the tools are all there. The toolbox is full for Logan Mailloux. It's just a matter of execution. And I was disappointed for him when he was cut from training camp, but I had a feeling that he would not stay in Laval for too long. And granted, he has not yet been called up. But if he keeps putting up performances like he did on Friday night in Laval's season opener, it won't be long before he finds himself in a Montreal Canadiens jersey. I mentioned at the beginning of the video that Laval absolutely had a dominant performance throughout the game, winning 5-2. Well, Logan Mailloux had a 4-point night, not a 4-point weekend. He had a 4-point night, scoring 2 goals and 2 assists. Very strong defensively. He just looked like the complete package. And absolutely, it seemed like it was a statement game for Logan Mailloux right out of the gate. He was a +3 on the night. He had 3 shots on goal. And he looked like, okay, you sent me back down here. Here is what I can do. And I'm not going to let it faze me that I'm back in the AHL and I'm here to earn a call-up. Now, I also say that maybe he'll get called up sooner rather than later because, frankly, there are 2 guys on the blue line in Montreal who haven't knocked it out of the park in these 2 early games. And we see, even with Alex barre-boulet being sent down, that Marty St. Louis or Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon, they're not wasting any time. If someone forces their hand, if someone stands up and makes them make a decision, they're obviously gonna run with that. Arbor Xhekaj and Justin Barron have not yet looked tremendous in the early Montreal Canadiens season. Arbor Xhekaj, when Jayden Struble gets healthy, I think there's going to be a competition on that side of the defense for that position. And Justin Barron's going to be the same thing. If Justin Barron doesn't step things up a little bit, he could also be one that we could see at risk for maybe them calling up Logan Mailloux to test him out in Justin Barron's position. And as we've seen with Emil Heineman, Oliver Kapanen, when given that opportunity, a player can absolutely come in and steal a job. Now, to be fair, Logan Mailloux is still going to have some growing pains, and there's still going to be games where he's going to have more learning lessons than celebrations. And Saturday night wasn't stellar for him or the entire team. He didn't have anything on the score sheet that night. He was a -2 on the night. But I have a feeling that he and the rest of the Rocket are going to step things up again in their home opener coming up later this week. Speaking of which, what is on tap for Laval this week? Well, they've got 2 games at home. It is their home opening weekend, Friday night and Saturday afternoon, both of which are against the Syracuse Crunch. So Joel Bouchard coming to town for the first weekend, behind the bench as the bench boss, of course. Syracuse and Laval have a storied bit of a rivalry. Things are usually pretty intense between these 2 teams, so it should be a great pair of matchups this weekend. Also, remember, Jesse Ullinen ended up signing with the Tampa Bay Lightning over the summer, and he is currently playing for the Syracuse Crunch, so it will be a bit of a homecoming back to Place Belle for Jesse Ullinen. Also, though, on Syracuse's roster, Joel Teasdale, and Toby Paquette-Bisson. So there's going to be some pretty fun hockey going on at Place Bell this coming weekend. Now, this whole concept of maybe someone getting an early call-up, or even the fact that barre-boulet has already come down to Laval this early in the season, is it too early for the Canadiens to shake things up a little bit? What about Arbor Jacki? What about Justin Barron? What about David Savard, Christian Dvorak? Where should Slafkovsky be playing? On the top line, or should he be on Doc's line? There's lots of questions of things that could potentially get shaken up in these early weeks for the Canadian season. And I was pleased to co-host this week's Canadiens Connection podcast with Rick Stevens, where we went on a deep dive and answered our opinions on some of the things that could happen early on. And so if you'd like to hear us take a deep dive on those questions and our opinions on what should happen with the Canadiens roster in these early stages of the season, well, you'll want to check out this video right here. And I'll see you again next time.